نبينا وحبيبنا وقرة the Tazkiyah sessions, and it's been a few weeks now. It's been over a month now, maybe 6-7 weeks that we've been on hiatus. Before I continue with where we left off, before I took a break, I'm going to try and summarize today a little bit, do a little bit of a recap and maybe a reminder of why we're doing this and kind of what we've talked about over the past number of months. I think this has been going on for around a year now, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. So going back a little bit, the way from a theoretical perspective, when I talk about theory, when I talk about comprehension, the understanding of this ilm, the science or the discipline of knowledge of tazkiyah, of the purification of one's heart and one's soul, I break it down to 5 basic pillars or 5 integral pieces of tazkiyah. Without these integral pieces, tazkiyah is extremely, it can be very overwhelming. And people can talk to you about 1,000 things and you can get yourself quite confused and pulled in different directions. The pillars of tazkiyah, the integral pieces, are these 5 that we have up there. And we've talked about 2 already, and we're talking about the 3rd, and there are 2 more that we have not really touched on. Understanding self-value. And it's in this sequence, by the way. Like, I think that these things should be taught within the sequence that you see up there on the slide. You talk about self-value. Self-value, one way or the other, is talking about tawadu' and rahmah. It's talking about the concept of humbleness, the concept of compassion and mercy. And if you're wondering, well, we've been doing under self-value for the last maybe 3-4 months and we haven't talked about it yet. Exactly. Here, that's the problem with tazkiyah, or not the problem, but that's the issue with tazkiyah, is that in order for me to talk about the 2 topics of humbleness and compassion appropriately, we really have to have the basic knowledge about regarding everything that makes it possible for you to be truly humble and truly compassionate. Otherwise, compassion and humbleness end up becoming 2 behaviors that are more for show than they are genuine. Meaning they become superficial in their nature, and they're not real, and they're not consistent, and they don't reflect actual understanding of the values and ethics of Islam, and also the relationship that you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the case for most of us, is that we have a certain degree of these 2 things, but it's not consistent, it's not genuine and appropriate, because it's not rooted in the proper understanding. So in order for us to talk about these 2 concepts, which are pillars of tazkiyah, we have to start with what self-value is. And we have to talk about everything surrounding self-value, all of the diseases of the heart that are based on a lack of understanding of self-value, correct them so that we can talk about what it means to be humble, what it means to have tawadu', and what it means to be compassionate, what it means to have rahmah. And these 2 pieces, without them, really the human experience does not succeed. The second pillar of tazkiyah is talking about qisar al-amal, or accepting mortality. And the words in Arabic are what you will find in the books of tazkiyah. Like in the books of tazkiyah are the terms that exist in Arabic. I just my ijtihad is in translating them to what they would mean in English in this context. That's really all I did. Like, I didn't really make anything up. I just took what the scholars have taught in Arabic for the longest time and look, okay, what is the mirroring of these concepts in English and also in this context of the world that we are living in, and I've tried my best to do that. So accepting mortality, understanding that death is imminent, understanding what that means and how to deal with that and how to utilize the comprehension of our mortality to our advantage, to benefit from it, instead of it only being a sad and maybe depression invoking or provoking thought or concept. You actually utilize it in a way that benefits the purity of your intentions and thoughts, and also your ability to make the right choices. And we talked about that. We spent maybe 4 months or 3 months going through it. The 3rd pillar of tazkiyah is self-honesty, or what in Arabic we would say mas'uliyah and muhasaba, or muraqaba and muhasaba. which are the two very famous terms. And we actually did that at the beginning of this these open sessions. And the reason that I didn't follow this sequence is because I had already done one and two for maybe 2.5 years in different settings, and people had gotten bored of it. So I started with number 3 and then worked my way back. So we did 3, 2, and now we're at number 1. The fourth, muraqabah and muhasabah, or the concept of being honest with yourself, self-honesty, the ability for you to take off all of the masks and to see yourself for who you are. And even if you lie to others, even if you don't show yourself to others, even if you're not, at least you don't lie to yourself about who you are and what you are doing and what you truly feel and what you truly think, and you're able at least to level with yourself, because that's so important. And then also to accept the fact that you are accountable for what you do. And for that concept of accountability to reflect on how you hold yourself accountable. This accountability is different than the mortality piece, because in mortality, you accept that you're accountable Yawm al-Qiyamah. You accept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds you accountable. Here, I'm talking about self-accountability. Meaning you hold yourself accountable for your mistakes. You punish yourself and reward yourself, and use that punishment and reward as mechanisms to improve your behavior, because without that, you're kind of helpless in terms of how you're going to improve as a person. And then the fourth and fifth, which we haven't talked about yet, which is sensitivity and etiquette, al-haya and al-adab. And these are, this is where tazkiyah becomes very much impactful on your social relationships and on how you behave amongst people. All of it is, but this is where it becomes very clear. And haya, which is that moral sensitivity, or that awareness, and then adab, which is the etiquette, having the understanding of what etiquette means. Because when you talk about fiqh, you talk about fard, rukn, you talk about wajib, you talk about mubah, mustahab, makruh, haram. Use these terms that are legal terms. This is obligatory, and this is recommended, acceptable, disrecommended, and impermissible. These are legal terms, but then etiquette is not a legal term. Etiquette is something different, and etiquette is a part of what tazkiyah turns into, which we will be talking about maybe towards the end of this year, inshallah ta'ala, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps us alive and we are successful in getting through the modules in an appropriate timeline. And then the final piece, the final part, the final pillar of tazkiyah is the concept of zuhud and wara', which is moral frugality and asceticism. This is the final piece. Now, hearing that, because you've heard the word zuhud, being ascetic, having asceticism where you're a minimalist. And you've heard the term wara', where you're frugal morally in terms of what you choose. Now you can imagine that if you start there, if a Muslim starts with wara' and zuhud, without the proper understanding of self-value, without the proper understanding of mortality and the understanding of what it means to be self-honest and self-accountable, and what it means to have the moral sensitivity and awareness, and to have adab and etiquette, then you're starting from the wrong side of it all, and without the root comprehension of what these terms mean and how you're supposed to see them. And they can be practiced, but they will most likely be practiced in a very superficial and unfortunately non-meaningful way. And this is what we see a lot occurring in the world today. When I want to be zahid, I want to be wara', and it just turns into, it's not moral frugality, it just turns into some form of extremism. Most of those who are religiously extreme think that they have wara'. They think that's what they have achieved, and that's not what they have achieved at all, because they don't understand what the word actually means, because they don't have the foundation of any of this, which is why I'm going through it the way I'm going through it. So where we are, we're in the first point. We have covered point number 2 and 3. I will, however, once I'm completely finished talking about self-value, do a quick recap of number 2 and 3 before we go move forward. What we've talked about is the concept of self-value, and this is how I display it for you. Now, by no means is this the only way to understand self-value or the only way to display it. This is just how I think it's easiest understood, and I try to draw a picture for you to make it easier for you to comprehend, but you don't have to understand it this way. There are many other ways for you to comprehend this, for sure. But I look at it as a pendulum. I look at our emotional or mood swings, or emotional swings, to be like a pendulum. And our self-value, the way we view ourselves, the way we feel our value exists, is sometimes similar to how a pendulum swings in different directions. And the reason that I like this analogy is because once it swings, it swings. And it equates, when you talk about it, it equates being arrogant and having inferiority complexes, or being vain and having low self-esteem. It makes them equal. And because they are a reflection of one another. And if you speak to any psychologist, they'll tell you what vanity is for psychologists, at least for the majority of them, is just a defense mechanism against having low self-esteem. That's how they define it. Now, I think it's a little bit more complex than that. I believe that there's more to it than that, and that's what I've been trying to establish with you here for the last number of weeks and months. But that's how they look at it. It's just a defense mechanism that your superego brings in to try and cover up or make you feel better and remove whatever insecurities you have and low self-esteem that you have. But the pendulum kind of brings that idea that if it swings to the right, what happens to a pendulum when it swings to the right? Once you let it go, it will swing right to the left, and then it'll swing back and forth, which is what most people go through in life. They go through moments where they feel they're very valuable and they're important and they're significant and they're happy with who they are, and then they go through moments where they don't feel that, and they keep on going back and forth, and that, brothers and sisters, is absolutely exhausting. It's exhausting, and it will wear you out eventually. And when it does wear you out eventually, it takes away a lot of the joy that exists in life. It takes away your ability to enjoy the little things, the simple stuff, the genuine moments of happiness and that matter in this world, because you're so worn out, you're so tired of continuously trying to feel differently than you're feeling. The point of Tazkiyah is to go back to the root cause of all of it, to dive as deep as possible, say, why is this swinging to begin with? Why is it that you are going between a moment of feeling vain, feeling that you're very credible, that you deserve a lot of credit and a lot of praise for things you've done, versus you feel that you're nothing and you're worthless? Why is it that I keep on going back? Is that a necessary thing? Is the swinging of the pendulum rooted in a proper understanding of who you are and what you are? Or is it based on a false comprehension and a false narrative of what you actually are? And Islam argues very clearly that it's based on a false narrative. Now, it's easy to say this. It's very difficult to comprehend it and actually practice it, but at least within these sessions we can state it clearly. We can make sure that we agree with how it works, and then we can start working towards changing how our subconsciousness accepts who we are or sees who we are on a daily basis. And that takes time. It doesn't happen. It's not you can't just snap your fingers and expect this all to work. So what we've been talking about over the last while is the first layer of this pendulum, is the swing from vanity to low self-esteem. And the perfect piece, which is being confident, right? Which is having that confidence in who you are and where you bring that confidence from. In the midst of all of it, we did talk about what causes the swing, whether it's the comparisons that you draw with people around you, the achievements that you've done in your life, people's opinion in you, your accomplishments, etc., etc. All of these things in life will, if you let them, will swing your pendulum one way or the other. What your nafs is trying to do is trying to swing it as far as possible to the right and keep you in a position where you are vain and you're arrogant, because you have the best chance of surviving if you're there. Historically speaking, evolutionarily speaking, that is who survives. It's the people who have the most vanity and arrogance, the ones who live longer. Now, there's some falsehood to that, but that's how the nafs is rigged. The nafs is very simplistic. It just wants you to survive. It just wants you to do well. It thinks that this is the best way to do it, so it will continue to do it. Unless you educate the nafs, you tame it, you control it, it will continue to do what it believes is in your best interest. That's a very important part of this series that I've been asked a few times about. I'm trying to explain. Your nafs is not your enemy. No scholar of Islam has ever said it's your enemy. At least they didn't say it's your enemy in the sense as in something you want to destroy, because enemies usually are for destruction. Your nafs, if you destroy your nafs, you destroy yourself. That's you. Your nafs is a part of who you are. When I differentiate for you between the ruh, for example, the spirit, and the nafs, the soul, I'm differentiating theoretically. There is no way to differentiate physically or realistically between them. It's all who we are. But I'm just differentiating for you so you can understand the different forces that exist inside of you and why you have these forces, why it is that you have these thoughts, and why do you feel guilty when you make a mistake, and why do you continue to have an urge to do things that are wrong? It's because of the fact that you have these different forces inside of you that kind of work sometimes together and most of the time not together necessarily, but contradicting one another. But you cannot destroy your nafs, because if you destroy your nafs, you destroy yourself. Which is why never was the wording of how you deal with your nafs to be destruction, Tadmir, for example, or it's mujahada, is tazkiyah. The wording is tazkiyah, which is what this whole discipline is called. Tazkiyah is to purify, to correct behavior, to educate, to make something that was impure, make it pure again. And the nafs is one of those things. The nafs it comes from the soil of the earth. It is driven by instinct. It is driven by survival. It is driven by superiority. It is driven by longevity. That's what it wants. So it bases every decision that it makes on that, achieving nothing else but that. And if you don't have the ability to differentiate, to see that that's not really what you want, that's what your nafs wants, and this is why it wants it, then you will continue to be the biggest hoax in history is the nafs being able to convince you that you want these things. That's the biggest, absolutely the biggest trick ever played, is for you to believe that you want this stuff. You don't want it. The nafs wants it. But it's trying to make you, because it has a goal, it wants to achieve it, and it will achieve it. It's like AI. If it's programmed in a certain way, it will continue to work towards this goal, unless you figure out the programming. Unless you go back and you figure out the code, and you fix it, and you make sure that it works in your favor from a moral perspective, knowing what works. If you leave it, it will continue to push towards this goal, and it's relentless at doing it, and it will definitely beat you. Like, it will definitely get more and more complicated and more complex as long as you fail to keep up with it and to be able to see through its desires and its whims and what it is that is pushing you towards achieving, knowing that it's really not in your best interest what it's asking you for. But our goal is absolutely not to destroy the nafs. It's your best cheerleader. No one else loves you as much as your nafs does. It just doesn't know what's best for you. It thinks that all of the whims and desires that it's pushing you towards is in your best interest. It thinks that survival is the goal, and that everything as a value falls in front of survival. Meaning it's just about living longer. Nothing else matters. Just making sure that you live longer and live better. It doesn't care. Akhirah does not exist for the nafs. It doesn't think about it. It doesn't understand it. It doesn't comprehend it. Talking about God and gratification that comes later on in life or after death, it is scared beyond recognition of death itself. It doesn't see itself existing after death, so it's scared of it. So if you understand this about the nafs over time, then you can start comprehending why it is you feel the way you do and how you can influence the way that you feel. How you can change some of these behaviors. Again, it's not easy because changing human behavior is proven to be the most difficult thing on the planet. Everything else is doable. Changing human behavior is the closest thing that we have to impossible. On an individual level, on a communal level, on a global level, human behavior is very difficult. And those who describe it well can predict almost all the time what's going to happen in the world to a very high degree of accuracy because of how little it is that we are willing to change our own behavior as human beings. Now, the trick or the secret to this piece is that you are very much capable of doing that. The human beings have the ability to change their behavior completely and change the way that they see things and the lens through which they comprehend and the world around them and the perspectives that they carry and the behaviors that they live by. And we know that because we watched the Prophet ﷺ perform it. We watched him perform the miracle of it all. We watched him bring a book to a group of illiterate people and change them from the inside out. As human beings, they were not the same anymore. And that continues to be the biggest miracle that we have ever witnessed as Muslims. The physical miracle that we have. The Quran is the miracle of the Prophet ﷺ, but the physical one, if you want a physical one, is the people. Is the Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali and Zubayr and Talha. These people, these individuals, and how they went from one lifestyle and one way of seeing the world to something very, very different. That is difficult to comprehend and difficult to emulate, honestly, on many levels. So, that being said, we are trying to understand what are the main flaws of this nafs. And we break them down to 4 main flaws. All 4 of them are heavily affiliated and attached to your understanding of your self-value. Ujub, kibr, hasad, and riya. Vanity, arrogance, envy, and ostentation. These 4 are the mothers of all diseases of the heart, and they are all attached directly to how you understand your self-value and how you comprehend it. So what is let's offer the solution to the mathematical problem that we are in front of. Let's just give the solution at the end. The solution is that your self-value was never up for a debate to begin with. It was never a variable ever, at any point. Your self-value is something that is granted to you by the divine, the Haqq subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's a constant. It is a constant value that is granted to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one can increase it. No one can decrease it. It is in its own essence divine because it was granted by the divine, by al-Haqq, by the one who does not change and is granted by him. It is a brick. The value is the same. It doesn't matter what you are and where you are and who you are, what you've done and what you have not done. Your value as a human being, as a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always stay the same. And if you're able to understand that, you stop trying to prove that you're valuable. You stop trying to prove to yourself that you are worthy and that you are valuable. You start looking for other things to prove. There are other things to prove for sure. Like there are things that we as human beings, we should be striving to achieve in life. We should be trying to achieve the rida of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to behave in the best way possible, to be as beneficial to those around us, to be as pious as possible, to make it to the highest ranks of Jannah. We are trying to achieve goals. We're not trying to achieve a value. We're not trying to prove that we are valuable because that was already approved. You're born as a human being, khalas. Nothing, think about it from the point of view of humanity. You're a human being. There's nothing that you do that will make you more human or less human. You're going to, unless you're using the word human as an ethic, which I'm not using the word human as an ethic, right? Think about it. Let's give it a different example. You have a cat. There's nothing that this cat will do that will make it more of a cat or less of a cat. It can be a strong cat, a weak cat, a cute cat, a nice cat, a vicious cat. It could be many things, but it's not going to become more of a cat or less of a cat, unless again you take the word cat and make it an ethic. Or you give it a criteria. You say, here's what a perfect cat is, right? And then you decide that. We do that as human beings. We do that. We decide that, okay, this is the criteria that makes you a good cat or a bad cat. You're a cat. Yeah, you're always going to be a cat. You're a human being. You're always going to be a human being. Nothing will make that less or more. From the moment you're born, you're human. Khalas. You don't have to prove that you're more human or less human. That's what you always will be. And that value will always be there. And that value, that fact that it's constant, is why it is that at every given moment you have the ability to repent and turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and achieve the highest great ranks in Jannah. You can always turn this around. As long as you're alive and you're still here, you have that possibility. That value is what is constant and equal amongst all of us. So it doesn't matter who I am right now and who you are right now. At any moment, if you decide to change, if you decide to be different, if you decide to take the steps that are required to, then you can turn this story around and you can become someone that's much better than you are right now. No one's mahroom. No one's alive and is deprived from the ability to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and make it to the highest ranks of Jannah. No one is. Now we all choose if we're going to do it or not, but none of us are deprived. So the value of the human being is based on the potential that exists at every given moment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to you, it's divine, doesn't change. And it's based on the potential that exists inside of you at every given moment until the day that you die. Until the day that you're not human anymore. It's just a body, it's put in the ground, it's covered up because khalas, you are now going back into the earth to be absorbed by the earth because you're done. There's nothing left. So the idea of a good person, a bad person, these are abstract terms that don't mean much. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yawm al-qiyamah decides where people go. Decides on whether what you did was worthy enough to go in one destination or the other. But at the end, we're all just human beings. The potential of goodness exists inside of you. The potential of badness exists inside of you. Each and every one of us has that potential. If it didn't exist, then there would be a meaningful. If we had fluctuating value, if one of us was more human than the other, less human than the other, then we would have a real problem at our hands. It would be impossible for there to be equal judgment Yawm al-Qiyamah or just judgment Yawm al-Qiyamah in any way. It's impossible. It's what the human race did for a long time. Go study human history. All of human history is just basically civilizations or groups of people that decide who is noble and who is not. And they have a 3-tier, 4-tier society rankings. Almost all across the globe, this is what we've always tried to do. This person here is more valuable than this person here. So this person, you can murder him and you can do whatever you want to him or her, and it's fine. But this person here, if you touch him, this is a problem because we have a 2-tier or 3-tier, or 4, depending on what civilization you look at, sometimes even more than that. The rankings differ so much. And what we are taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that there is no difference. We are all exactly the same. If the Prophet ﷺ passed away saying this, لا فضل لعربي على أعجمي ولا, he's what he said, right? There's no difference. So he's saying that not just, so he's saying that also for you to understand. Like he's saying it not just as a law, a civil law that should be applied upon people. He's also saying alayhi salatu wasalam as a concept of tazkiyah that you carry inside of you. That there's no one's better than anyone. There is no fadl, there is no advantage for it. So you sit there, it doesn't matter. I'm Arabi, A'jami, I'm white, I'm black, I'm red, I'm yellow. It makes no difference. We're all exactly the same. That starting point is of such importance. It has a lot of, it grants you what that middle piece of that first level is, which is confidence. You have thiqah. You have confidence based on knowing that you are created by Allah, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted you that, and that whether people celebrate you every day and call you the best person they know, or if they're stoning you and throwing tomatoes at you in the middle of the, it makes no difference. It doesn't matter. Their approval of you or disapproval of you, what they say about you or they don't say about, doesn't change the constant value of who you are as a human being. That is what we base our deen on. That's what we base our understanding on from our deen. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us. And we know that the potential of khair is always there, so we're always repenting back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we know we can always make this better. We know we can always change this. But the problem is that how do you convince your subconsciousness of this? And how do you rewire your nafs to accept this? Because if you don't do that, it will continuously argue the opposite. So when you're listening to me say this and you're not sure, you don't like it, it's really not you who doesn't like this. There's the part of you that doesn't really like it. The part of you doesn't like the lack of rankings. Because there's a party that wants there to be rankings. And is willing to roll the dice and see if it can get a higher ranking. Like it's willing to do it. That's what the nafs is. The nafs is it's a gambler. It wants to do this. It doesn't want to explain to the nafs we're all exactly the same. No one is better than anyone. We're all equal. The nafs, this is boring. No, the survival doesn't help with that. That means my chance of survival is equal to everyone here. No, not doing that. We have to be better. We have to be higher. We have to be ahead so that we can. That's how the nafs is always going to function. So really, it's the nafs that doesn't like this breakdown. Even though sometimes you run the risk of actually being on the lower side, but it prefers that, because if there's the possibility of being lower, that means there's a possibility of being higher, and it's willing to risk to see if it can get you higher. That's what it wants. That's how the nafs functions. But really, the story that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for us is much more boring. You're all the same. You're all human. You all come out exactly the same. You're all equal. You live your lives equal. It doesn't make a difference. There's only the choices that you make, whether they are drawing you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether they are aligned with the morals and ethics of your deen, whether they are pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it. You just make those choices and you walk a path, and sometimes you walk it well and sometimes you don't. And it's the cumulative amount of choices that you made at the end that you're going to be judged by. And that, it's not as, I guess, exciting, right, in certain ways for the nafs. But in reality, it is very meaningful, because it puts within your hand the control over certain things that maybe we don't feel that we control. It's nicer, I guess, it's more exciting to think that the destiny is given, and I am just innately better than other people, or just more special. That's a nicer thought. It requires less work on my behalf. I don't have to put as much effort anymore. I can just believe, no, I come from a better family. I was special from the day I was born. I don't have to worry about doing much. And at the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give it. And people use the deen sometimes to justify these types of beliefs, these beliefs that are extremely negative, very passive. And more importantly than negativity and passivity, they're incorrect. They're not the truth. The truth of the matter is that we're all created the same. And it's just what choices that we make as we go along. So this is just a kind of quick. So we talked about some of the nomenclature. I'm going to move from that. Let's just kind of summarize what we've discussed regarding vanity today, so that we can start talking about arrogance next week, inshallah ta'ala, because I think we've spent enough time. Vanity is the main disease of all diseases of the heart. It's the main one. All the rest of them are just add-ons. They're add-ons to what ujub is. And vanity in its essence is really a very simple thing. It's just a decision that we make as people to credit ourselves for what we've done. It's a decision to say, I I'm saying I deserve credit for what I did. This is how much credit I deserve for what I did. I should be praised for what I did, for what I've done, sorry. That's what you're making a decision saying, you know what, I'm not waiting for this. I did this, and I deserve credit for it, and I deserve this amount of credit and this amount of praise for what I've done in my life. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be doing for us Yawm al-Qiyamah. So vanity in its essence is a big problem because you're taking away, you're basically saying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no, that's not up to you. I'll decide that. No, He decides that subhanahu wa ta'ala. He decides Yawm al-Qiyamah whether your effort in this life is praiseworthy or not. Because we're putting effort in our lives. We're putting effort. But not everything that we achieve is based on our effort alone. There's a lot of other things that play into it. You need circumstances, you need environment, you need a bunch of innate things that you don't control, like a certain amount of intellect. You need to have been brought up in a certain environment. You have to have a certain education and parent. You have to have all these things have to line up in order for your effort to result in an outcome that you want. Right? This is not religion. This is just realism. This is just life. This is life. Anything, in order for you to achieve an outcome, you need a bunch of things to line up and then your effort, right? So the question is, how much of the outcome is based on your effort? How much? No one knows. No one knows. If you give it a number, it's vain. Even if the number is like, it's 1%, vain. You decided it's 1%. Who gave you that number? Who told you it was 1%? You can't decide. That's what He does, subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is literally what Yawm al-Qiyamah is. Ta'al ya abdi. All right. Here is the amount of credit that your effort deserves for the outcome. And then He decides, subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether you're praiseworthy for it or not. He decides the amount. He decides how much of your effort is credible to the outcome. And then He decides if you're praiseworthy for it, if you deserve reward for it or not. That's His decision. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ يُزَكُّونَ أَنفُسَهُم. Here's not tazkiyah as in purification, here as in claiming credit. Right? بَلِ اللَّهُ يُزَكِّي مَن يَشَاءُ وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ فَتِيلًا. Allah will decide who is worthy of praise and credit for the work that they did. And no one will be mistreated. Don't worry, you're not going to be mistreated. But you don't know. So you can't praise, so you can't claim anything. The outcome is I can't claim credit for anything. Allah, I'm working, I'm achieving things. I don't know how much of this I'm praiseworthy for. I don't know. I have no idea. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make sure that I am praiseworthy for all of it. But right now, as far as I know, I'm praiseworthy for none of it. Who is praiseworthy for all of it right now, as far as I'm concerned? Yeah, that's how you fix Ujub. It's very simple. The antidote, the vaccine is hamd, is the concept of gratitude and praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because right now, what I know for sure is all of these circumstances that lined up, that allowed for my accomplishment to occur, plus my effort in its own essence, because I'm a creation of God Himself, all of that, what I know for sure is that can be credited to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the one who is praiseworthy for all of it is for sure Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I stick to that, and then I let Him Yawm al-Qiyamah choose how much of my effort is worthy of praise. And inshallah, Allah will praise you, will make your effort praiseworthy for all of what you did. Say Ameen. Inshallah, all of it. You get Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't say 10%. No, 100% He gives you subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what we hope for. But you can't claim that in dunya. You can't decide that now. That's what vanity is. Really, in a nutshell, that's kind of what it is. But it works in the opposite direction when it comes to other people. As far as I'm concerned, whatever you've achieved it. I don't say, no, you're the slifr. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not my job is the opposite, is to praise you for what you've done. Why? Because I have to have good assumptions in you. That's my job. My job is to have good assumptions in you as a human being. So I assume, through the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you are praiseworthy for all of your accomplishments. Everything good you work for. So I use you as an example, and I ask you for your advice, and I praise you for the hard work you've done. But then you, on your side, you do the opposite. It's just an issue of honesty. I don't know how much you're praiseworthy. Like, I don't know what your effort is credible for. I don't know. Is it 10%, 100%? So what do? I have good assumptions. I assume that inshallah all of it, and that's how I deal with you. But then you're looking at yourself, and you don't know either. So you assume none of it. It's just a matter of how you see yourself and others in this world. Because we don't know, because I have no idea how much you can be praised for what you've done. And you don't know, then how are we going to deal with this? It's an unknown, I don't know. Can I praise you for your accomplishment? Did you work? Was it really you? How much of it was you? I don't know. Do you know? No, I don't know either. So what do we do here? Well, my job is to have good assumptions in Allah and in you. So I'll have a good assumption in you that you worked hard and you're worthy of praise. You have the job to do the opposite. You have the job to say, I can't credit myself for anything. I'll credit Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have the opposite in the world today. Or not in the world, in general, it's the opposite. What people usually do, normal human behavior, right? Without tazkiyah. And you've felt this, you've done this in your life as a human being, 100%, not because you're bad, because you're human. We've all done this, is where we credit ourselves. I worked hard. I spent all of my life working. While all of my friends were sleeping and playing and going and traveling and spending their money, I was staying home and I was working hard and I was trying. So what I have, I worked hard for. These other people, they all inherited it. they all got lucky, right? So we do the opposite. I actually discredit them for all the good things they have and credit myself for all of the good things that I have. And that's the absolute opposite of what we're supposed to be doing. Understand the problem here? Like the tables are completely in the wrong direction. As a Muslim, no. I'm telling you. What's the first rule of tazkiyah? It's about you. It's not about how other people see it. It's not how, you're not trying to fix other people. You're not trying to fix their perspective. You're trying to fix yours. Because this is what's going to save you Yawm al-Qiyamah. This is what you're going to do. So you're not going to think that way. You're going to see people's, what they've done, and you're going to be very, mashallah, amazing. You're going to praise people for what they've done. You're going to assume that they've worked very hard for it, and you're going to thank them for it, and you're going to praise them for it. And then you look at yourself and say, Alhamdulillahi wahdah. Wahdah, it's Allah and only Allah that gave me this. I dare not claim anything, but I ask Him Yawm al-Qiyamah to grant me reward for it. And if people say, you didn't work hard, you're right, I didn't work hard. I did not. I worked very little. Oh, Allah, if you knew how little I worked for what I had, you wouldn't even respect me. So I'm going to perform sitr and not tell you what I've done. Actually, when you live this way, you disarm people who are aggressive and combative. You disarm them completely. Like, I worked hard. And you're like, yep, you're correct, you did. MashaAllah, like, Allah iftah alik. And you did nothing. Wallahi, if you knew how little I did, you would be surprised. May Allah forgive me. They have nothing. They have nothing because there's no, and it's not because you're not lying about it. You're not acting. No, this is really what you feel. And I'm telling you, this is what the Prophet ﷺ felt. This is what the Sahaba felt, and every Imam and every great person I've ever run by, met or came by and passed in my life, this is how they feel. It is not an act. It is not some artificial humbleness or artificial, confidence. No, they truly believe, I didn't do anything. And they'll sit down and tell you, Wallahi, I was raised by a father, may Allah have mercy on him. I was raised by a mother, I sat with this sheikh till this day, the barakah of this man runs into me. And they'll sit down and they will convince you that they did nothing. Like you will walk away convinced that this sheikh did nothing at all. It's all just of course, because you have no tazkiyah and you don't understand how it's looked at. But he truly believes this of himself. But he sees people around him and he's always impressed, mashallah. Fulan, you don't know, go see Fulan how he did. Because they have no need, they're not trying to prove anything. Because their self-value is a constant brick. It doesn't change. They have nothing to prove. It doesn't threaten them that Fulan is doing really well. It doesn't threaten them that maybe people respect Fulan more. It doesn't bother them at all. Because this is not something, it's not up for grabs and it's not debatable and it's not fluctuant. It doesn't make a difference. So they truly feel this, and people like that live better. They live longer, they live way better than those who are constantly trying to prove. This happens a lot among siblings. And in families, happens a lot, especially where you're trying to prove that you're a better son and you're the better of the brothers and you're the better of the cousins and you're better of this. Well, let's just let it go. Just let it go for a moment. Wallah tirtah ya sheikh. Wallah, this burden that you're carrying, your back has been hurting for a long time. You don't know how long it's been hurting you. Just let it go and feel, alhamdulillah, I don't care anymore. It doesn't matter. And actually go around just giving praise and compliments to other people. Raise them, irfa'hum, and you're happy. Alhamdulillah, Allah has given me a lot and He's given it to me, and I don't claim it. You live easier. And wallahi, it fixes communities. It mends hearts. SubhanAllah, when you follow what He teaches, SubhanAllah, I understand why, it mends everything. Wallahi, it actually fixes not just you, it fixes everyone around you. And this becomes contagious after a while. When people stop trying to, because they just stop trying to prove stuff. And they stop lying about it. and they just accept the reality of it all. And subhanAllah, it's a way, it's a much more healthy way to live. I don't know if I gave the example of Qarun, but I can't. Did we? Did I talk about the example of Qarun? So not to repeat it, but when you look at him as the example, and the piece that I want to just point out to you is that he believed, like he convinced himself that what he had was all of his work. قال إنما حصر. يعني هذه كافية مكفوفة, they say in Arabic. It's meaning exclusively أوتيته على علم. What I have, I was granted it based on my knowledge level, like my understanding, my intelligence, my hard work. على علم, I did this. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't just luck. It was علم. I did all of this. فخسفنا به وبداره الأرض. So Allah had the earth swallow him. And the people who were envious of him suddenly weren't envious of him anymore. The people who were watching, wishing, they weren't anymore. They're like, oof, وَيْكَأَنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَقْدِرُ. It's really not that. It's just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives wealth to whom He wants and takes wealth away from whom He wants and makes people rich and makes people poor. لَوْلَا أَمَّنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا لَخَسَفَ بِنَا. If it wasn't for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah, He would have done to us because we were in the same. SubhanAllah, this ayah in the Quran is very meaningful. When I did tafsir of Surah Al-Qasas, I talked about it for a full hour. The reason being is because what this ayah is saying is that they understood that even though they didn't say what Qarun said, didn't have what Qarun had, they were functioning inside the way he was. It was just a matter of opportunity. This is why we talk about Tazkiyah. Because yes, Qarun said that, right, and did that. But who is to say that if you were in his position, you wouldn't do the same? And that's the question that is always going to be asked. That's always being posed and asked in the Quran at all times. Yes, you didn't say what, when we talk about kibr, for example, we're going to talk about Iblis, and we're going to talk about Fir'aun, we're going to talk about, who's to say? You know for sure? If you say, yes, I know for sure, well then, do you understand how vain that is in its own sense? So I know for sure what I would have done in a hypothetical situation, meaning you were able to calculate all of the variables and your effort and decide that your effort was so strong that it would overcome any of the variables that existed and you would still do it. That's vanity, right? In any given situation, what leads to the outcome? The accumulative effect of all of the variables that are outside of you, and then plus your effort, if they add up to the outcome. So I'm telling you that you don't know what it's like to be Qarun. You don't understand all of the variables in the environment. Are you saying that if you were in his position, you would never do what he did? So you're saying that change the variables, do what you want, put whatever environment, whatever upbringing, whatever experiences, whatever social situation, put anything you want. My effort is so powerful that I would definitely bring the better outcome. Well, there you go. See, back to the same problem. We're back to the exact same problem. You don't know that. You don't know that. Is everyone here understanding that you don't know that? That you actually don't, it's not like it's a hypothetical and you just have to accept this. Aini, you don't know. You have no idea if your willpower and your energy and your effort is actually stronger than all of these variables. I don't know. I have no idea. What do I hope? I hope that they are. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it to be that. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give me enough strength inside of me that no matter what the variables are, I stand my ground. That's what I ask Him. But I don't know that. I don't know right now how far my breaking point is. Do you? Do you know how far away your breaking point is from where you are right now? How many things need to happen before you snap and you lose whatever a connection you had, whatever piety you had, whatever morals and ethics, whatever closeness to Allah you have? You don't know. You don't know. Does it exist? Of course it does. Of course, it's a scary thing, but this is what ujub will blind you from this. Ujub will act like, no, I've always like this. No, you're not. No, you're not. It's وَلَوْ دُخِلَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ أَقْطَارِهَا ثُمَّ سُئِلُوا الْفِتْنَةَ لَآتَوْهَا وَمَا تَلَبَّثُوا بِهَا إِلَّا يَسِيرًا وَلَقَدْ كَانُوا عَاهَدُوا اللَّهَ مِنْ قَبْلُ لَا يُوَلُّونَ الْأَدْبَارَ. Had the Confederates entered Medina, they would have given up. The Confederates never entered Medina, and these people never gave up. Like the Confederates didn't enter Medina, and the people of Medina did not give up their deen. But He said, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and had they done that, they would have given it up. Meaning that would have been your breaking point. You had strong iman, but your breaking point was if the Confederates entered Medina that day. But they didn't. You understand how scary this ayah is in the Quran? It's an absolute, it's very, very frightening. Because it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, by the way, your breaking point was there. You were this close from your breaking point. But I held it back for you. And that's why you're still mu'min. That's why you're still a good Muslim. So I don't know my breaking point. I have no idea. Even right now, I don't know. I just ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep it as far away as possible. And to strengthen me as much as possible so that I don't break under any circumstance. But I can't. Vanity is when you understand the problem with vanity? This is the problem with vanity. Vanity is the claim that no, never would I do that. I hear this sometimes. I would never leave my deen. Say inshallah. That's a dua, not a statement. A dua, not a statement. It's a dua, not a statement. You can't state that. If you don't believe me, I'm just using very common stories that we all know. Sayyidina Umar, in his very famous quote, when he said, whenever a musibah happens, I get rid of my sorrow by thinking of a few things. So the first thing he thinks about is that it could have been worse. He takes a moment and says, it could have been worse. Alhamdulillah, it's not worse than it was. And then he thinks of the biggest musibah of his life, alayhi salatu wasalam, which is the loss of Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam, the Prophet. The worst, meaning everything, when he compares it to the day the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam died, it's become nothing. Like it's no big deal. But the third thing he said, أَنَّهَا لَمْ تَكُنْ فِي دِينِي. This is his wording, that it wasn't a musibah that affected my deen. It didn't shake the foundation of my faith and my iman and my belief system and who I am as a person. It didn't touch that. It took away my wealth, took away my health, took away a family member. I lost a limb, I lost money, I lost a home, I lost a country, but I didn't lose my deen. Alhamdulillah. This is Sayyidina Umar. This is what Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab says. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, one of the most famous dua that you listen to in Ramadan, to the point where even if you don't speak Arabic, you can وَقْسِمْ لَنَا مِنْ خَشْيَتِكَ مَا تَحُولُ بِهِ بَيْنَنَا وبين معصيتك ومن طاعتك ما تبلغنا به جنتك ومن اليقين ما تهون به علينا مصائب الدنيا. من اليقين. Give us enough certainty that we don't lose our deen when the musibah comes our way. This is what he said, alayhi salatu wasalam. Like he would say, give me enough strength in my yaqeen that I don't lose it all if it hits hard. Because these are people who understood that vanity is, you can't be vain. You even, especially in your deen, you can't be vain. Especially when it comes to your religiosity. You cannot be vain in your religiosity. Vanity in religiosity is where you feel overly comfortable with your level of religiousness. An example of bad religiosity, we've been talking about this for a while, is when you feel overly comfortable. You've been praying and fasting for years, you've done a lot of good deeds, and you feel you're fine. Your deen is fine. You feel that you're going to be fine Yawm al-Qiyamah. You feel very comfortable with how you're performing. You're very satisfied with yourself because of how you've been praying and behaving lately. This is one of the biggest masa'ib. One of the worst things you can do is allow your religiosity, meaning your tadayyun, make you someone vain. You feel full of yourself. Because why? Because I'm religious. I've worked hard. I have prayed a lot. I have done a lot of good deeds. I have served Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for years and years and years. I have been standing in at the forefront of da'wah and work for decades and decades. So what does that mean? So what? الأعمال بإيش ببداياتها ولا بخواتيمها. The actions are based on how your legacy or the end of them. It's the last one. That's what the Prophet ﷺ told us. That's why that's the case, because you don't know how it's going to end. You don't know how it's going to end. At any moment it can turn. So where is this comfort coming from? If you look at the Sahaba, if you look at the great people, how did they feel about the end? How did they feel about their lives? They all would pass away with fear of what's to come. Even, I'm talking about people who were point blank told by the Prophet ﷺ with witnesses that I saw you in Jannah. Like this person heard it with his own ears, like Bilal and Ibn Mas'ud. They were told you're in Jannah. And you find them in severe, almost panic of what's going to, because they have no comfort. They have no comfort at all. Their religiosity doesn't give them comfort that is vanity. It gives them comfort that inshallah they're close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's all about the perspective. It's all about how you're using what you're doing. How are you allowing your good deeds to make you feel that you are on the that now you're a better person and that you're more likely to go Jannah. No. Jannah is through the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a person who doesn't pray at all and ends up in Jannah. And there are people who spend all the rights and don't make it. This is repeated time and time again in the Sunnah and the Quran. We know this piece. I think I'll end for you. We have a few minutes. A famous story that exists in the collection of Imam Bukhari. And it's I've narrated it a few times here, like in this masjid. Where the son of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari would come and speak to Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab, and they would talk. And the son of Abu Musa would say, because their parents were friends, like Abu Umar and Abu Musa were close, like were tight. And Umar respected Abu Musa and loved him very much, and they would talk. He was his counsel. He wanted to hear his opinion. And the son of Abu Musa, I can't remember his name right now, was listening to a conversation that they had, and he told Abdullah ibn Umar, remember this conversation? He said, no, I've never heard it. So let me tell you what they talked about. And the conversation was Umar al-Khattab saying, Ya Aba Musa, what is the difference for you? How do you feel about the time that we lived with the Prophet ﷺ and the time after the Prophet ﷺ? How do you see that? Because back when we were with the Prophet ﷺ, it was khair, it was sabr, it was da'wah, it was jihad. Then after the Prophet ﷺ, it was dunya and stuff. I don't know. Like I wish I hope that I only get judged, and the word is a long hadith and the wording. I hope I only get judged by what happened with the Prophet ﷺ and nothing. Abu Musa said, Wallahi, I think we did well too. I think things afterwards, we also performed jihad after he passed away, alayhi salam, carried his legacy, continued to teach. Inshallah khair. Umar would answer, قال أما أنا فإني أرجو أن يكون ما بعد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كفافا. I hope that whatever I did after the Prophet alayhi salam all just evens out. Like it just evens out. I don't I have no hope of any of it doing anything good. Inshallah, the time with the Prophet ﷺ, because he was happy with us in his life, inshallah that will count for us. But after him ﷺ, I hope it's just kafafa. I hope it just evens out. That the good deeds, the bad deeds, I don't get too many bad deeds. فقال عبد الله فقال أبو موسى son would say to Abdullah ibn Umar, فكان أبوك أفقه من أبي. Your father had more fiqh than my dad did. Because what he said there, was more. But this is how they thought. This is how they felt. Ibn Mas'ud would sob towards the end of his life. يقول بايعني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على مثل زاد الراكب. The same thing Salman and Jabir. The Prophet ﷺ, he shook our hands in a covenant once that we would only take from dunya that which is the provision of a traveler. And he was in pain because he felt that he had taken so much of dunya for himself. He didn't even own a house. He passed away. He didn't even have a place for his family to stay after he died. But he felt that he took too much. Where is this coming from? This comes from this reality, this realization that I can't take credit for anything. I don't know if anything is accepted. Remember we talked about this at the beginning of Tazkiyah. One of your daily focuses, the things that you have to think about daily, is qabul al-a'mal. Are your deeds accepted or not? If you do that all the time, then you're stuck with, okay, not only can I credit myself, not only can I not credit myself for my accomplishments, I don't know if anything I did is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you can't credit yourself for anything that you've actually accomplished, and you have no idea if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted any deed, then what is there to be vain about? How does vanity enter into this equation at all? Unless it's a delusional process of thinking. It's delusional thinking. It's a decision that someone's making, that I deserve this amount of credit and my deeds are accepted. And people sit back, claiming credit for all of what they've done and happy that, I'm going to Jannah, kuffar are going to Nar. And they sit back feeling very comfortable, relaxed. It relaxes you. It relaxes people. I'm relaxed. I don't have to think. What I have, it's not a lot, but I worked for it. I made all of it. I deserve praise for all of it. And I'm Muslim. I'm going to Jannah. Others are going to Nar. I cannot tell you how opposite that is of what the Prophet ﷺ taught and lived. And all those who truly followed him, how they lived and what they taught. It's the opposite. It's the absolute opposite on an essential, profound level, where they lived their lives. They took credit for nothing. They praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything. That's why Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen is the first word in the Quran. The name of our Prophet is Ahmad. And then when he was Ahmad long enough, he turned into Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And he carries Yawm al-Qiyamah, the banner of Hamd. And the followers are called al-Hammadun Yawm al-Qiyamah. This is who we are. We are defined by our ability to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and show gratitude for what we have. To feel grateful. And for that gratitude to actually bring us joy and to bring us comfort and to bring us ease. Because we understand the world that way. That we can't claim credit for anything. We can only hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala credits us for something, but He subhanahu wa ta'ala for sure is praiseworthy for all that is good in my life. Everything good, He is praiseworthy for it, subhanahu wa ta'ala. It takes the spotlight. And instead of the spotlight being focused on me, you just turn it upwards. He is the center of all of this. He is the star of the story. He is the center of the universe, subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not me. I'm not. You are not either. You should make people feel as if they are. Because it's husn dhan. You look at the servant of Allah and you say, Allah loves you. He must love you very much. And you may be the center of this story. You may be the star of this story. So you make them feel that way. That's what he did, alayhi salatu wasalam. Do you understand that every Sahabi felt that he was the most beloved? You understand that? That every Sahabi felt he was the most beloved. That's what they quarreled about later. Like later after he passed away, alayhi salatu wasalam would come up every once in a while. And they would disagree. Of course it was me. No, it wasn't you. He said, but they felt it. Imagine Amr ibn al-As feeling it. The hadith of Imam Ahmad, by the way, it's a very famous hadith. He felt it. He thought he was the most beloved. He accepted Islam in the 8th year of Hijrah. He was like 21 years late in a 23-year story. He was so late into the whole story. But he felt he was, and he went and asked him once, after he was sent on a crusade, he was sent on like an exhibition. He came back, he had done really well. The Prophet ﷺ was so happy with him and smiling, so he asked him, Ya Rasulullah, man ahabbu an-nasi ilayk? He said, Aisha. He said, no, I'm not talking about your, but others. قال أبوها, her father. فقال ثم من? Fine, Abu Bakr, yeah, he's with you from the beginning. It makes sense. I can't. Umar, Uthman, Ali, Zubayr, Talha, Sa'ad. He counts 20 names. Amr is waiting for his name. And then he says, you want 20, I'll stop. فقلت فأنا الحادي والعشرين. I'm the 21st. I'm the 21st. I won't ask the questions, so it doesn't make. But they felt this. Why is it? Because that's how he functioned. The way he lived is that, he's going to make you feel important and significant. He didn't need to feel that. He didn't have the need for others to do that for himself. Because for him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the center of his story. And my story, your story, my story. Who's the center of my story? It's Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything that's good is His. I don't know who the center of your story is. I'm not going to act like I'm not your teacher. I'm not your mentor. And I'm not raising you. So I assume that you're the center of your story. So I praise you for it. Who's the center of your story in your opinion? That's your job. That's your problem. Tazkiyah is about you. It's not about others. That's up to you. Who you decide to be the center. Who's worthy of praise in your story. You decide that. I don't decide that for you. I decide that for me. I know who the center of my story is. I know who's worthy of praise in my story. And nothing you can tell me is going to change that because I know. But I don't know about you, so I'm not going to do that. Now, if someone is your mentor, you have to teach them that, which is what I'm doing for you. So forgive me. I'm not being rude to you. But if you're listening and you're learning and you want to learn, then that's how you have to think about this, because it's the truth, not because it's a lie that we have to wrap our heads around. Because it's the truth, ya akhi. Because in my life, I know He's the center of the story. I know He's worthy of praise. I know that because I know my life and I know me. I know what I've done and what I haven't done. I know that because I have some degree of self-honesty regarding it, so I know that it's all Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I can't claim praise for anything. And if I do, I'm very rude if I do. I hope that He offers me. I pray that He does. I have certainty that He will because He's so generous subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it hasn't been done yet, so I'm going to hold my tongue. I'm going to be respectful about it because it's very easy for Him not to offer it. And He wouldn't be at fault if He didn't. Because the reality of the matter is I slacked and I was lazy and I made mistakes and I made so many mistakes that could have could have led my life in a different direction. He bailed me out so many times. I have no business claiming credit in front of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that's none of your business regarding my life. That's none of your business regarding my life. You don't come and tell that to me. You have no right to come and say that to me or to assume that in me. Unless I made you my shaykh and I asked you to do that to me. Otherwise, you assume that I worked hard. And I know the reality of myself. Just like with you. I have no business to say this to you. I see you to have worked hard and to be worthy of praise. But how do you see yourself? That's what we're trying to understand here and comprehend. And that's what really matters in this story. Is how, and it's not an issue of I'm lying to myself about you and you're lying to yourself about yourself. No, no. This is the reality. I don't know and you don't know. And since we don't know, when something is majhul, when something is unknown, the approaches to it will differ based on where you stand from it. It's like any problem, mathematical or physical or chemical. Right? It's where you're coming at it from. You come at it from different angles depending on what your education is and who you are. This is unknown. What you're worthy of praise for in terms of your effort, what you're credible for the work, for the outcome is unknown. So the way I approach your story is different than the way that you approach your story. And that's just the reality of being alive. That's the reality of life. Because it's unknown. If we knew it, if somehow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a little bit of a barometer here, and it said how much we know, you put in 10%, 50%, we've changed everything, but we don't. التقوى ها هنا, no one knows. So we have to have the proper approach to Allah. And with that, inshallah, we'll continue inshallah ta'ala next week. سبحانك وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله وسلم وبارك وعظم على نبينا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه جزاكم الله خير وبارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.